Welcome back. So today I wanted to make a video to describe the differences between three main guitars: the Telecaster by Fender, the Stratocaster also by Fender, and the Gibson Les Paul. And so this video is designed not for the experienced seasoned player, but more for the inexperienced new guitarist that hasn't purchased a guitar yet, doesn't really know what the differences are between these main guitars, and is looking to possibly buy something in the near future. So when I was younger and I walked into a music store, I was faced with a wall full of guitars. And there was all different makes, styles, configurations, and I didn't really know what I needed, what sound I was after, what tone I really liked, and the differences between them. And there was nobody out there really to help me out. So I had to go and buy guitars over the years, learn what the differences are between them, and learn what works for me as a guitarist and the tone that I'm after. So I wanted to help everybody who's new to playing guitars by creating this video. So if you're an experienced player, you might not want to watch this, but if you're new and you're looking at starting to play guitar and you want to possibly purchase your first electric guitar, this rundown will help you, I think. So let's start off. I'm going to try to make the video short. I think there's going to be a lot of stuff to cover, but I'm going to try and do it as quickly as I can. And this is an overview. Keep in mind that we're not going to go over every single detail because that would just take too long. I'm just going to give you an overview, a general overview of the different tones and styles and features that you're looking at with these guitars. So over the years, Fender has come up with a lot of different types of guitars. Most notably, the Fender Stratocaster and the Telecaster. So the Telecaster was one of the first guitars or type of guitars that Fender released. The Telecaster was released in about 1950s, and the guitar was actually built by Leo Fender and was designed mainly at the time to accommodate the styles that were popular, such as country, rhythm and blues, and jazz. So the guitar wasn't really designed for heavy rock and that kind of thing yet, because it wasn't as popular. It didn't actually start becoming popular till later on. So the guitar was very simplistic. And if we look at the features of the Telecaster, we can see that the design is quite simple. There's only two pickups in this guitar. The construction of the guitar is made in such a way as to be modular. So everything on this guitar can be removed quite easily, including the neck, the bridge, the pickups. The strings go through the body, and that's one of the things that is very different about this particular design. Is I think it was one of the first designs to actually use the string through body feature, which in many, if you ask many guitarists, they tend to think that that's also what adds to the tone of the guitar and the sustain of the guitar. So being modular like this type of guitar is very easy to repair and maintain. If something should go wrong, it's very easy to swap out the neck of the guitar or the hardware, the pickups and whatnot. Some other guitars, and we'll get to those later, are not as easy to do that. So you have to keep that in mind. The body itself is a relatively thick slab of wood, and the thing about this particular guitar is there's no real body contours cut into it, and that kind of came a little bit later. So some people don't like the square aspect of this guitar, and you might need to get used to that aspect, because a lot of the guitars that are out there today have taken that into consideration. But keep in mind, this was developed very early on and is very basic in terms of design. The guitar itself, a guitar like this, made in the USA version, it's going to cost you about $1,500 or so. So you have to be prepared to understand where this guitar lies in the spectrum of cost, okay? So about 1,500 bucks. Obviously you can get cheaper versions that are now made in Korea and China and whatnot, but for the sake of this video, we're gonna stick to US made discussions. So for a US guitar, about 1,500 bucks, okay? This guitar, this style guitar was most notably played by such players as Jimmy Page, Jeff Beck, Albert Collins, George Harrison. So if you listen to a lot of their music, you'll get an understanding as to what that sound is. For example, Jimmy Page used a Telecaster on Stairway to Heaven. So it's probably one of the most popular songs out there, and everybody knows the song and the solo. So if you listen to that, you'll understand the flexibility tonally that you can get with a Telecaster. The thing about the Telecaster is it does have quite a broad dynamic range. You can get sounds that are twangy and bright to sounds that are bass heavy and warm or more piano-like as well. So it's quite surprising considering it only has 2 pickups. The scale length of the guitar is actually longer than, say, a Gibson Les Paul. So the actual length of the neck is longer, and some people like the longer scale length, or just find it easier to play compared to some of the other shorter scale length guitars out there. Since the pickups are further apart, it does give you a wider range when switching from the treble or bridge pickup to the neck pickup. And this guitar has only a 3-way switch. So you basically have 3 positions. You have the neck position, you have both of them, and then you have the bridge position. So they didn't introduce anything else that was a little bit more fancy or complicated in the early days with this particular guitar. And also to note, the neck pickup is encased in a metal casing, and the bridge pickup, the actual bridge sort of contains the pickup, so it actually adds to the boosting of the higher frequencies, and I think a lot of people think that's what actually gives the Telecaster more of that twangy treble boost. The guitar is, although it's heavy, I'd say it's less heavier than a Gibson Les Paul, and it cuts very well through the mix. So if when you're playing with a lot of other guitarists and there's a lot of things going on musically, a lot of times if you're not in the right frequency spectrum, you tend to get buried in the rest of the sound. The Telecaster is a lot easier to cut through that mix and be heard. So that's, a lot of people do like that and prefer to be in that tonal spectrum. The other thing in terms of flexibility and adjustments, as I mentioned earlier on, although the guitar is modular, the actual saddles that are being used in this guitar, the early versions of the saddles were not adjustable independently. And what I mean by that is the height of each string is, you're not able to adjust the height of each string independently. They're actually in groups of 2. So what ends up happening is if you adjust the height of one, let's say your high E string, the first 2 strings, for example, need to be adjusted together. So you're able to trick it by sort of giving it a slight angle, but typically it's not as flexible as some of the later designs that Fender came out with, which you were basically allowed to adjust the height of each string independently. So that's something that you want to sort of keep in mind. So all in all, the Telecaster is a very nice guitar, and you know, honestly, it took me a long time to appreciate the Telecaster. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't like the look of the Telecaster because they associate it with country music, and today it's not necessarily cool to be, you know, playing country music. Although, you know, people like Brad Paisley and all these great country artists today are extremely popular. A lot of the kids today want to play metal. They want to play, death metal or more darker, aggressive type music, and they don't necessarily associate the Telecaster to that. So it's kind of been overlooked, and a lot of the older players tend to appreciate the Telecaster after trying different guitars and stumbling on this. It took me a long time to appreciate the Telecaster, and now it's one of my favorite type of guitars. It's really a workhorse, and you can do a lot with it. Flexibility wise, I would say that it's really between a Strat and a Gibson Les Paul. It kind of fits in between. You do have the punch and tonality that you need. You also have the flexibility that you need, so that you really fit in between, and it's a good compromise if you really want to have the best of both worlds. So you might want to consider this guitar if that's what you're after in terms of tonal ranges. So now I'm gonna quickly go and talk about the Gibson Les Paul and move on so that the video doesn't become extremely long. So hang on there, I'm gonna just pull up my Gibson Les Paul and we'll continue from there. Okay, so let's look at the Gibson Les Paul. The Gibson Les Paul was developed in 1952 by Les Paul. It was named after him, obviously. And so this guitar typically retails for about $3,000 today. And so that's where you need to aim in terms of cost. The guitar is typically played by very popular players that you will know, such as Jimmy Page, Slash, Billy Gibbons, Duane Allman, etc., etc. There's a lot of players that use this type of guitar. The guitar uses a shorter scale length as compared to a Stratocaster, and the most notable difference with this guitar is the woods that are used, being mahogany, and the fact that it uses humbucker pickups and a different type of bridge. So this guitar was developed very early on, and again was geared towards country players, jazz players, rhythm and blues players. But it's been adopted as the main rock type guitar, and people looking to get more heavier tones tend to lean towards the Les Paul. The humbucker pickups produce a warmer sound, a punchier sound, and the reason why they're called humbuckers is because there's actually two pickups that are wound together and cause noise canceling. So typically when you're dealing with a single coil pickup, they tend to be more prone to 60 cycle hum, which is the hum that is generated when you're plugging into an outlet with dirty power, and you'll hear the buzzing sound, which people don't like. Humbuckers tend to cancel that. So a lot of people who want sort of a cleaner sound in terms of noise tend to lean towards humbuckers. The guitar also has typically a little bit of a wider, flatter radius to the neck, and so some people tend to find that easier to play. The body, though, considering it's made of mahogany in the back and typically a top that's made of maple, tends to be heavy. And over the years, especially the original Gibson Les Pauls, they were not chambered at the time, and so they tend to be very, very heavy. And so people that have bad back and issues when you're standing up, carrying that weight over time could be quite stressful on the back, and you want to maybe consider that if you already have issues and go with a lighter guitar. And so that's why you look at Jimmy Page in those early shots of Led Zeppelin, and he's got an awful exaggerated slouch, but it also made him look really cool. So there's that, right? The guitar typically has a three-way switch, and so you have the ability to switch between the neck pickup and the bridge pickup, and also between the two. Today they've done a whole bunch of fancy additions to the line, and now they have split coils, out of phase, push-pull pots and whatnot. But for the simplicity of this video, let's keep it simple. So typically you have the ability to go between neck, bridge, and the two pickups together, and you have two volume tones and two treble controls, so you're able to control each pickup independently and blend between the two, which gives you quite a bit of flexibility tonally. The adjustment for the saddle here is a little bit different than what you would normally see on, say, a Stratocaster. It's got a tailpiece and the actual bridge. The difference here is that the height of the strings cannot be adjusted independently. You're basically moving the entire bridge up and down so that you have you're compensating basically all 6 strings at the same time, which doesn't give you as much flexibility as, say, a Stratocaster. Also, you don't have any ability to put on a tremolo bar here. You can put something like a Bigsby, which is sort of an older version of a tremolo system, but typically the Les Pauls did not come with a tremolo system installed. In terms of functionality, we've covered the basics. In terms of repairs and flexibility, the difference between a Gibson Les Paul and, say, a Telecaster or a Stratocaster for that matter is that certain things cannot be adjusted easily. So the neck, for example, is glued in place. It's not bolted in place. So if there's any reason to have to do any work on the neck, you have to really unglue it, and it's a major job at that point. Also, certain things such as the binding along the neck go over the frets. So if you have to replace one fret, for example, oftentimes you have to be careful because the binding will be affected by that repair. And so it's not as easy to repair in a certain sense. Not for everything, but for certain things, it's a little bit more difficult. The mahogany being used as the principal wood in the back of the body and the back of the neck gives it a warmer sound, and people tend to associate Gibson Les Pauls to warmer, punchier sound. And it also distorts very nicely. That's why over the years it's become sort of known for rock. It gives you a really nice heavy sound, which people do like a lot. So those are the major selling points and points to look out for when considering a Gibson Les Paul. So let's move on to the Stratocaster now and go over that. So next we're going to look at the Stratocaster by Fender. This guitar was developed by Leo Fender in 1954, and as you can see, the guitar is probably one of the most recognizable electric guitars that most of the guitar heroes at one point or another played. So, you know, people like David Gilmour, Jeff Beck, Jimi Hendrix, Eric Clapton, Ritchie Blackmore, the list goes on and on. So the interesting thing about this guitar is it was only developed a couple years after the Telecaster, and already you can see that Fender had gotten other ideas as to how to make the guitar more flexible. They introduced 3 pickups instead of 2. At the time they were still using a 3-way switch, but later developed a 5-way switch. They improved the contour of the body to be able to get access to the higher registry. They introduced the body curves and the tummy tuck here on that side to make it more comfortable. You know, various things that made it more interesting. The bridge on the Stratocaster has independently adjustable saddles. Again, it's very modular, just like the Telecaster. So if you have to do repairs, that's very simple to do. They kept the initial string through body design, but they changed it a little bit because now they introduced a tremolo so that you're able to actually use the whammy bar on this, which you weren't able to do on the Telecaster. So that there's, you know, quite a few improvements, and over the years the Stratocaster has stood the test of time you know, people have been trying to improve this guitar with various features such as you know, different options in terms of pickups and different types of bridges and different, you know, options in terms of tone knobs and whatnot, locking tuners and the whole 9 yards. But you know, generally I can say that this is one of the better built guitars out there in terms of flexibility and tonal variety. So let's go over some of the selling points. So a Stratocaster today will cost you about between $1,200 and $1,500, depends on what you're looking for. Again, US made. The guitar is made of various tone woods. A lot of times it's alder. You can find different types, but generally alder is quite popular. The weight of the body is not that heavy compared to a Gibson Les Paul. It's a lot lighter. The pickups that are used, since you're using single coil pickups, again, you do often have some issues with hum, and they've introduced different types of pickups over the years, which are hum canceling, noise reduction type pickups. Noiseless was what they call them. Some people like them, some people don't. Personally, I prefer to go the classic route. I don't mind the hum, and I'd rather have a little bit of hum than to lose some of the tone that's associated with these noiseless pickups. So if you're looking at this type of a guitar, you can expect to have tonal range which will get you anywhere between jazz, funk, R&B, some rock, obviously. Will it do metal? It can. It's not known for metal, but there are some people over the years that have been using Stratocasters, namely Yngwie Malmsteen, you know, that which is kind of he's in the realm of metal. So it's not necessarily a heavy metal guitar, but it can get you there with the right pedals and equipment, if that's what you're after. In terms of durability, obviously the guitar stood the test of time. Again, everything in this guitar can be modified, removed, or replaced very easily. The guitar was initially designed to do that. Where does it fit between the Telecaster and the Les Paul? I'd say, you know, somewhere in the middle. There's a lot of people who have more than one guitar, and ultimately, you know, they end up getting both. Personally, I think if you could afford it, get all of them, because they all definitely do different things. But for, you know, standard rock, especially if you're going to do things that need a little bit more higher end twang, like funk, for example, I think this guitar is more capable of doing that and getting you there, as opposed to maybe a darker sounding Les Paul would be able to do. So definitely the Stratocaster is sort of a very flexible guitar. You're able to do a lot with this guitar, and you're able to have a lot of different options. Nowadays, they've put on you know, humbuckers, where you have a combination of one humbucker and two single coil, or two humbuckers and a single coil in the middle. People have been modifying these types of guitars for many, many years, all the way back to Eddie Van Halen, where he kind of put in a Gibson humbucker along with the Fender single coils. And I think maybe he's the person who actually started that trend way back when. So you can do a lot with the Fender Stratocaster. I think that either way, you're not going to be disappointed. It's just a question of finding your own tone and getting what you need out of the guitar to basically encourage you to play and get you in that zone where you're not really thinking about the instrument, but thinking more about the music that you're going to be creating. And so if you're playing certain styles, definitely try all the guitars before you decide. Also, keep in mind that all of the guitars are different. So even though you're trying Stratocasters, You know, you can try 5 different Fender Stratocasters, same brand, same model, and they're all going to sound a little bit different. So just because you try one and it doesn't necessarily do it for you, doesn't mean you should give up. Try a few of them and you will be surprised on how different they actually are between one and the other. And you have to actually search to be able to find the right one. So don't give up, and keep in mind that there's a lot of guitars out there today and there's a lot of choice. So really try to think about what you want to get out of your guitar, and don't be afraid to experiment and try different sounds. Try different amplifiers with your guitars. The combination of amplifier, pedal, and guitar. You know, you can spend so much time getting the right match. One pedal, for example, might work really great with one type of guitar, one type of pickup, and not so much so with another type. Same thing with amplifiers. There's certain guitars that just seem to be made for certain amplifiers and work so well with them, and others don't. So, you know, you might find that you found the guitar that you love, you bring it home, you plug it into your amplifier, and it doesn't do it for you. It could be the actual combination of what you're using and how you're using it. So don't give up. The search for the right tone and the right guitar takes many, many years. I've been searching for a long time. I'm finally getting closer to what I want, and but the search is not over. It always continues. So enjoy your search for the perfect instrument. I hope this video helped you a little bit and gave you a better understanding of what the differences are with the different guitars. And if you haven't already subscribed to my videos, please do. I appreciate your comments. And if there's anything that you'd like to know, don't be afraid to ask. I'm always reading my comments and I answer them whenever I can. Stay tuned. I'll have other great videos coming your way.